When we talk about freeing women from the corset, a few names come to mind. Coco Chanel, maybe Paul Poiret, but what if I told you that long before those two, there was a woman in Austria who designed clothes for women, who let them breathe, move and exist without any restriction. Her name was Emilie Flöge, and today she's largely remembered, if at all, as the lifelong partner of artist Gustav Klimt. Klimt was famous for his love life, his many relationships, but the relationship with Emilie Flöge was different. She was 12 years younger, the relationship lasted a lifetime, and she was not only a muse, she was also his patron and, most crucially, his business partner. And before I tell you more about her life, I need to say this here, this is a non-sponsored video, I'm just sharing my personal opinion and my research here. Everything I say is alleged and for entertainment purposes only. Emilie Flöge was born in 1874 into a modest working-class family, and because of that, her path into Viennese high society was actually not a direct one, but somehow she managed to network her way into the cultural circles of the fin de siècle. She became friends with intellectuals and artists such as Muse, Joseph Hoffmann and also Gustav Klimt. And with Klimt she also had family ties because her sister married Gustav Klimt's brother. And this is because the families then spent a lot of time together. They also vacationed together. For example, in the Salzkammergut, we could say this is Austria's Lake District, where the elite during the monarchy and also the emperor and the empress themselves spent their holidays. And the relationship intensified over the years, and it's also fairly well documented because there are letters in Klimt's estate documenting the relationship. Unfortunately, most of Emilie Flöge's letters in her estate were destroyed during a fire in her last apartment. I find Emilie Flöge's story so interesting. I have read multiple books over the years because we have to put this into the context here. This is the beginning of the 20th century. It's before women gained the right to vote, and she managed, together with her sisters, to run a successful business and also establish herself independent of a husband in Viennese society. And the next thing that they overcame was seed capital. How did they start the business? Usually seed capital at the time came either from inheritance or through marriage. The Flöge sisters could not use either of it because their father passed away quite early. We don't know how much money he left for his widow and the children. We can assume that it was enough to basically keep the family afloat, but we don't know if it was enough to actually found the business. The sisters did some sewing courses and founded Schwestern Flöge, Flöge Sisters, a fashion salon that would soon dress Vienna's elite. Their headquarters was in the Casa Piccola, which still exists today. The name for the building comes from the cafe that used to be on the ground floor. It was run by Dominic Casa Piccola. I always thought, why is it called Casa Piccola, small building? Because it's actually quite a big building, but it's actually the name of the guy who owned the cafe. So I also learned something new when I did the research for this video. And this cafe was a very popular meetup for intellectuals, artists, the elite also. You know, Vienna is famous for this cafe society and coffee culture. And in the same building, the Flöge sisters moved in, and already the interior design of the salon showed how fashion-forward, design-forward they actually were, because Muse and Joseph Hoffmann designed the interior, which was also fairly new for a fashion salon at the time. And this was not only new, it was also a statement that the sisters made, because they showed that they are part of this revolutionary art movement that was going on in Vienna at the time. Some people say that Emilie Flöge benefited from her relationship with Gustav Klimt because he may have recommended to his clients to also get their clothes made at Schwestern Flöge. But it was actually also the other way around. Very often Emilie encouraged her clients to also go to visit Gustav Klimt and have him paint their portraits. And it was a true family business, and when I look at it, I think it's quite a success. So Emilie Flöge was in charge of basically all things related to creativity, designs. Her sister Helene was in charge of taking care of the clients. Her daughter did the bookkeeping. And then at the peak, they employed about 80 seamstresses, 3 cutters and also mannequins. So you can already see this was quite a substantial business. I actually discovered Emilie Flöge years ago when I did research about Paul Poiret and how he freed women from the corset. It was not so much linked to Gustav Klimt. And her most famous design is the so-called Reformkleid. We could translate this to reform dress. It is like a kaftan, and that's also funny because also Gustav Klimt is famous that he loved wearing these kaftans when he was painting or when he was on holidays. And at the time this was something radical, because when we think about it, the dresses were really, really complicated. They were really tight. So you needed a corset, there were multiple items associated with dressing. A lot of the well-to-do people had people helping them to get dressed. So going out for a walk was actually an ordeal. And when you look at this reform dress, it's really easy. It's basically just a kaftan that she threw over. And when you look at Emilie, she looked really effortless in it. And it still looks effortless today, maybe a bit artsy, but at the time, this was actually not something only revolutionary. It was also probably something that ridiculed a lot of people. And Emilie did not only design those clothes, she actually lived them. She and her sister wore those clothes when they went to other events or when they were seen in Vienna. She also wore them on holidays, so there are photographic documents of it. And this was also clever marketing, because she met all these high society people, then she was wearing something, and then they were inspired and they bought from her. And I said before, it may have ridiculed a lot of people, so we may think this was not really a design that a lot of people would buy, but she had many clients who loved this. For example, Clarice de Rothschild was one of her customers, and many other women out of these high society circles in Vienna. And coming back to Klimt, I actually find it really interesting how those two collaborated, because for her marketing campaigns, she turned to Klimt and he actually took pictures of her or mannequins, and then he had also his ideas. For example, he suggested not taking pictures in the studio, which was common at the time. He said, let's go into nature, into the outdoors, and also show the clothes in conversation with nature, which is very Klimt. He loved nature, we know that, and Emilie Flöge used this for her clothes and the marketing campaign. So not only the clothes themselves or the idea of them, but also the marketing were really revolutionary at the time. But because Klimt took the pictures, there was also a drawback. Some of the pictures have his kind of symbol or logo, GK. And when they were handed in to magazines, some people misunderstood that. And for a very long time, for decades actually, people thought these dresses were Klimt's design. Even though Klimt himself never claimed that these were his designs, it was other people who actually made that up. And today we know that they were definitely Emilie Flöge's work. It is obvious Emilie Flöge was always fashion forward. The reform dress shows it, but also because she went to Paris frequently to get inspired by other fashion houses, to see the trends, but also to purchase textiles. And it may be also due to Klimt, because there's a letter where he actually wrote to her saying she should go to Paris, because Paris would be a city where she could wear whatever she wanted and be herself. This shows the difference between Vienna and Paris, because of course at the time Paris was already a center of fashion. Vienna, due to the monarchy, had a fashion scene. It was also this capital of intellectuals, but of course it was not as maybe individualistic, I would say, as Paris. So Emilie Flöge was a fan of the reform dress, but what's also interesting, when then Paul Poiret, who would later be credited with being the freer of women from the corset, popularized his empire silhouette, she is also seen in these dresses with that very same Paul Poiret silhouette. So just because she created that reform dress didn't mean that she did not look at other designers and appreciate what they did. So I also find this important. If I remember correctly, I also read that Poiret came to Vienna. So it would be interesting to know if they ever met, but I could not verify this for this video. I find this very interesting that she did not only stick to her own designs, that she mixed it. What happened to the Flöge business over time? The post-war period and also the economic downturn in the 1920s affected the luxury industry and therefore also businesses like the Flöge sisters. In 1936, her sister Helene passed away, and from 1938 onwards, Emilie Flöge lost her big Jewish clientele. At the time, she was already 61 years old, so she basically decided to retire and deregistered the business in 1938. Emilie Flöge's story for me is really remarkable, not only because of the reform dress, but also because of her own personal story. This was a time where women were not even allowed to vote, and she managed to establish herself independent of a husband, father, or brother. As a successful entrepreneur, she was basically moving from working class into Viennese high society of the fin de siècle. And with her designs, for example, the reform dress, she played an important role in liberating women from the corset, even though for decades she didn't get the credit that she deserved. And I would like to know about you. Did you know about Emilie Flöge and her business, her designs? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please do two things that really help us creators. Please don't forget to like this video, and also please subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. If you prefer to read, I have tons and tons of articles on my website, thepinklookbook.com, and if you have time, you can also check out my fashion label Pelagona. And if you enjoyed this video about this trailblazing female designer whose legacy was in the shadows for decades, I have another video for you which may be interesting. Thank you very much for joining me in this video, and see you in the next one.